Some people walk into a room and go unnoticed, but 14 seconds later, no one can look away. Today's story isn't just about strength. It's about control, humility, and how one quiet girl changed an entire dojo without ever raising her voice. If you've ever been underestimated, watch until the end. You might just see yourself in her. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share a moment when you proved someone wrong just by being true to yourself. The wind was dry that morning, crisp in the way only a Colorado winter can be. The kind that makes everything feel thinner, like even sound has to work harder to move through it. Ella stepped off the bus at exactly 6:42 a.m. Her shoes touched down on the gravel in front of Steel Crest Martial Academy, the same way they had every morning for the past 17 days. She carried a drawstring backpack slung low across one shoulder and wore an oversized hoodie that swallowed most of her shape. No one greeted her. No one ever did. To them, she was just the girl who mopped the floors and collected empty water bottles, the one who refilled the paper towel dispensers and set the bins outside for pickup. No one asked her name, and she never offered it. The academy looked like it had been designed to intimidate. Tall brick walls, narrow windows, a metal gate that opened only halfway before stalling with a mechanical grunt. Inside, the place was spotless. Gleaming floors, polished mirrors, walls covered with banners, and framed photos of past champions. Everything had a place. Everything was loud in its pride. Ella had memorized it all. She moved through the front corridor, nodding politely to the receptionist, who barely looked up from his coffee. She walked past the training mats, careful to stay along the edge. The main hall was still dark. First class wouldn't start for another hour. That was fine. She liked the quiet. She slipped into the janitor's closet, hung her bag on the same hook as always, and tied her hair back. Her hands moved in practiced rhythm, the kind that didn't require thought. There was comfort in repetition, in routine. Her fingers brushed the back of her neck, where a faint scar still lingered from a tournament years ago. It had healed but never fully disappeared. She didn't mind. Scars were honest. They reminded her of where she'd been, what she'd chosen. She stepped out into the hallway with the mop and bucket just as the first early morning students arrived. A group of boys in their late teens, laughing too loudly, clapping each other on the back. She kept her eyes down. One of them, a tall kid with a sharp jaw and a sharper tongue, muttered something as he passed. She caught only part of it. Something about scrubbing and knowing her place. His friends laughed. She didn't react. Not because it didn't sting, but because she had chosen this. They didn't know who she was, didn't know what she could do, and that was the point. Out on the main floor, sunlight had started to filter in through the high windows. It painted long bars of light across the mat, golden and soft. She moved methodically, sweeping each section, her steps light and even. She didn't rush, she never did. The head instructor wasn't in yet, that was typical. Damon liked to arrive late, just enough to command attention. He was a tall man with an ex-military posture and a voice that could split a room. Most students feared him, some admired him. He seemed to prefer it that way. Ella had met his kind before. Around 7:30, more students arrived. A few parents lingered near the benches, chatting idly, but no one noticed the girl pushing the mop across the side mats. No one ever really looked at her face. They saw the hoodie, the mop, the silence, and assumed the rest. That was fine. Her shift ended at 9. She placed the mop back on its hook, rinsed her hands, and changed into jeans and a simple grey tee before slipping out the side entrance. She didn't go home. Not yet. Instead, she walked 2 blocks to a narrow park with a single bench under a leaning pine tree. She sat, took out the sandwich she had packed the night before. Peanut butter and banana, same as always. She chewed slowly, watching a squirrel hop across the frozen grass. A couple jogged past on the trail, bundled in puffy coats, their breaths trailing behind them in ghostly clouds. No one paid her any mind. Her phone buzzed once in her pocket. She didn't check it immediately, just finished her sandwich, wiped her hands on a napkin, and leaned back on the bench. The sky was pale and cloudless, a quiet sky. She liked those. Eventually she pulled out the phone. One message, just a name. Chuck. The text was short, 4 words. Still calm? She smiled slightly, typed back, steady as stone. There was no reply. None needed. She slipped the phone back into her pocket and sat a moment longer. Eyes closed, breathing even. When she stood, her movement was fluid, not fast, not sharp, but intentional. The kind of movement that came from years of muscle memory, trained not to impress but to endure. Back at the academy that evening, the energy was different. Evening classes were more competitive. The older students came then, the ones aiming for real tournaments. They stretched hard, practiced louder, and hit pads with more force. Ella arrived just before the 5 o'clock class started. She wore the same hoodie, same jeans. She wasn't scheduled to clean tonight, but she wanted to be there. No one noticed her standing in the back hallway, just beyond the glass. Damon paced across the mat, barking warm-up drills. His assistants, 2 younger men in black belts with clipboards, moved through the rows correcting form, or, more accurately, criticizing it. Lena was near the front, quiet, small-framed, but with something in the way she moved that hinted at depth. She kept her focus ahead, her hands precise. Not perfect, but intentional. Ella watched her. She had noticed Lena on day 3, the only student who hadn't once laughed, mocked, or ignored the janitor girl, the only one who had once held the door without thinking. That mattered. Midway through the drills, Ella slipped outside. She found the corner lot beside the back wall, where the light didn't quite reach, removed her shoes, stretched her arms, let the cold air settle in her lungs, and began to move. She didn't go fast, she didn't use strength. Every motion was measured, gentle on the surface, sharp underneath. Her feet whispered across the concrete, her hands cut through the air that barely stirred. She moved like someone dancing with ghosts, like someone remembering. 15 minutes passed before a voice cut through the quiet. That's not a beginner's kata. Ella turned slightly. Lena stood by the doorway, arms crossed, but not in challenge, in curiosity. Ella didn't answer, just bowed her head lightly and returned to stillness. Lena walked closer but stopped a few feet away. I've seen you mop floors better than most students hit pads. Ella shrugged. Old habits. Lena tilted her head. Do you train somewhere? Ella smiled faintly. Used to. They stood there a moment, neither pushing Shig nor prying. Then Lena said softly, If you ever want to spar, I'd be honored. Ella didn't respond, just nodded once. The next morning she arrived earlier than usual. The academy hadn't unlocked yet, so she waited by the gate. Her breath curled in front of her, fingers tucked into her sleeves. At 6:30 sharp, the door clicked open. The receptionist blinked in surprise. You're early today? Ella nodded. Just wanted to get ahead on supplies. He handed her the key card without comment. She moved inside, set her bag down, and took a moment to look at the empty floor. The mats were untouched. The mirrors are clean. The silence is complete. She stepped onto the center mat. For a few breaths, she just stood there. Then she moved. Her hands rose slowly, aligned with her breath. Her feet shifted, toes gripping the mat lightly. Each movement fed into the next, like water flowing downhill. Controlled, clean. Not for show, for memory. She didn't hear the door open, didn't see the shadow in the hall, but she knew someone was watching. She finished the sequence, bowed to the empty room, collected the mop, and went back to work. Later that day, Chuck called. She stepped outside to take it. He didn't say much, He never needed to. You're still invisible, aren't you? She exhaled. Almost entirely. Good. That's where real things grow. There was a pause. How's the ground? Hard, she said, but it's cracking. He chuckled softly. Let it crack, just don't bloom too early. I won't, she said. And she meant it. She returned to work. In the hallway, a boy walked past, bouncing a foam nunchaku off his knee. He didn't see her, didn't nod. I didn't know that 6 years ago she'd held a national title in his exact division. Didn't matter. She wiped a scuff off the mirror, tied the trash bag, stacked towels, listened to the rhythm of feet hitting pads in the next room, and waited. Not for a moment to shine, but for the moment they would finally see, not just her face, but what stood behind it. The part of her that carried fire in stillness. The part Chuck had helped her protect. And the part she would only unleash if the time demanded it. The day would come. It always did. Chuck arrived just after sunset. He didn't knock. He never had to. Ella had already left the door unlocked. She heard the slow creak of his boots across the tile floor before she saw him. That sound hadn't changed since she was little. It was steady, patient, like the man himself. He stood in the doorway for a moment, one hand still holding his hat. His other hand rested lightly on the edge of the doorframe, fingers curled just enough to show age, but not weakness. His eyes scanned the room, catching on the rolled-up mats, the small desk covered in notebooks, and finally on Ella. She didn't stand, just looked over her shoulder and gave a quiet nod. He stepped inside, set his hat gently on the table, and pulled out a chair. They sat in silence for a while. Neither felt the need to fill the room with noise. Chuck looked thinner than before, but not frail. His hands still had that firmness, the kind that came from decades of holding pads, correcting stances, and pulling people back from going too far. Ella passed him a cup of tea without a word. He took it with a soft nod, cradled it between his palms like it carried more than warmth. "You're watching them," he said finally. Ella didn't look up. "I am. How many days now?" 18. His eyebrows lifted, just a little. "That's long enough to know the rhythm." She nodded. "It's loud." He waited. They train hard, they hit hard, they scream and push and show off. But the silence after the drills, that's the part that says the most. What's it saying? That some of them don't know why they're still there. Chuck took a sip. The steam curled around his face. He said nothing. Ella leaned back in her chair. "It's not just the students, it's Damon. He's not teaching, he's demonstrating." Chuck's mouth curved into something like a frown, but gentler. That happens when a teacher forgets the difference between power and purpose. She looked at him. "Have you ever forgotten?" He chuckled softly. "Once. And your grandma almost threw a sandal at my head, so I learned quickly." Ella smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "I think Lena's trying, but she doesn't have permission to lead." "Then give her something better than permission." "Like what?" "A reason." Chuck looked at her, his gaze quiet but sharp. "You can be invisible to most of them, but not to the ones who are already watching." Ella tapped her finger against the table. "I saw her get knocked down yesterday. Twice. No one helped her up. Damon didn't even pause, just told her to hit harder." "And what did you do?" "I cleaned the windows." Chuck exhaled, long and even. "You were raised better than that." "I know." She stood up, walked to the corner of the room, and pulled out a small wooden box. Inside was a folded GI, old and worn, the collar softened by years of use. She ran her fingers along the hem. "He's building fear," she said, "not discipline. That dojo is afraid of failure, afraid of softness, afraid of stillness." Chuck stood too, walked to stand beside her. Then it's time to remind them what real control looks like. She closed the box. Not yet. He turned his head. Why? Because I'm not here to fight. He nodded. Then you'd better know exactly why you're here, or else one day someone will throw a punch that forces you to answer faster than you're ready. She didn't say anything, just stood there, breathing, listening. Chuck placed a hand on her shoulder. Don't wait too long, Ella. The quiet ones are always tested the hardest, and not everyone gets 3 chances to respond. She looked at him. I only need 1. He smiled. That's my girl. The next morning, Ella was at the academy before the sun rose. The air bit at her cheeks. She didn't mind. Cold was just another kind of presence. It reminded you to stay awake. She moved through her tasks with calm precision. Buckets filled, towels folded, entry rugs aligned. Her hands knew what to do before her brain gave the order. She worked until the first students arrived. Lena was one of them. She walked in with her gym bag slung over one shoulder, earbuds in, her face unreadable. But when she saw Ella crouched by the mirror, wiping a smudge no one else had noticed, she paused. Just for a second. Then she kept walking. Ella kept working. The class began on time. Damon entered with a spring in his step, clapping once to draw attention. His voice filled the room before he even crossed the mats. All right, warriors, let's see what yesterday's bruises taught you. Some students laughed nervously, others squared their shoulders like preparing for battle. Ella stood behind the glass wall in the hallway, watching. The drills started fast. High knees, side shuffles, kick transitions. Damon didn't correct. He commanded, do it again. Faster. That's not power, that's posing. You want belts or you want respect? The students responded out of habit, not belief. Ella noticed everything. One student adjusted their ankle brace behind Damon's back. Another faked a stumble just to buy breath. Lena flinched during a partner drill when her opponent threw a strike harder than needed. Damon ignored it. Halfway through class, he pulled the group in for a demonstration. He called for Lena. She stepped forward, her shoulders squared, but Ella saw the tightness in her jaw. Damon explained a takedown, then used her body to show it. Twice. The third time, he didn't pull his motion enough. Her back hit the mat with a sharp slap. The room held its breath. She got up quickly, bowed, took her place again. Damon kept going, like nothing had happened. Ella's hands clenched around the handle of her cleaning cart. She didn't move, just watched. Later, after class, Lena walked past her in the hallway. Her step was steady, but Ella could see the limp, could see the way her right hand hovered just above her ribs. Ella said quietly, "You okay?" Lena looked up, startled. She didn't answer. Ella didn't press. That night, Ella sat on her bed with her notebook open, the same one she'd used since her first national tournament. She flipped past old pages, notes on footwork, pressure points, tournament brackets, coach quotes. She turned to a blank page and wrote one sentence. They reward toughness, but not strength. She paused, then wrote again. Strength is what stands back up, not what knocks someone down. She stared at the words. Then I closed the book. The next few days passed slowly. Each morning Ella arrived early, cleaned, watched, waited. Each night she trained alone in the shadows behind the building. Sometimes Lena walked by and paused. Sometimes she didn't. Ella never invited her to stay, but she never hid either. One evening, Lena stopped fully, crossed her arms, watched for almost 10 minutes. "You're holding back," she said. Ella stopped mid-kick, turned her head slightly. Lena stepped closer. "I've seen brown belts trained like that, maybe black belts on a bad day, but you're something else, and I don't think Damon knows it." Ella dropped her foot lightly to the ground. What makes you think I want him to? Because if you didn't, you wouldn't still be here. Ella said nothing. Lena's voice softened. What are you waiting for? Ella looked at her. For the right question. Lena didn't understand. Not yet, but she didn't push, just gave a slight nod and left. The next day, Damon announced an internal sparring tournament. Just for students, he said. Friendly matches. Pressure tests. Winner gets assistant coach privileges for a week. Everyone buzzed with energy. Ella heard them whispering about it in the locker room. Who would fight whom? Who was undefeated? Who was nervous? No one mentioned the girl who cleaned the mats. Not yet. That night, Chuck called again. She answered on the second ring. He asked, "Is the water boiling?" She nodded. "Close." "Are you still waiting?" "I'm still watching." He was silent for a moment. "You know what I've learnt about silence?" "Tell me." "Is only power if you choose it. If it's forced, it becomes fear." She didn't respond. He waited, then added, "Don't let them mistake your grace for weakness. Even a shadow has weight if it moves at the right time." Ella looked at her reflection in the dark window. It was faint, almost a ghost. "I'm not hiding," she said. "I'm just making sure they see the truth when it lands." Chuck smiled. "You sound like your grandma. That's the highest compliment I can give." Ella laughed softly. "Then I better not mess it up." "You won't." She stayed quiet for a moment, then said, "I think the moment's coming." Chuck said, "Then let them come," and hung up. The wind outside had picked up. Ella stood by the window a little longer, letting the sound of it settle her nerves. In the back of her closet, under a folded stack of laundry, sat a belt. Not new, not black. A dark brown, fraying at the edges, its color faded by years and sweat. She picked it up, held it in her hands for a moment, then placed it back. Not yet, but soon, very soon. The sign-up sheet went up on the wall just before noon, a plain piece of printer paper that read Steel Crest Tournament Prep was taped under the big red banner. Someone had drawn a shaky bracket grid in pencil beside it. Names started filling in almost immediately. Kevin was first, of course he was. His name landed in the top left corner in bold, aggressive handwriting. Right under him went Troy, Mikey, and two other students, whom Ella didn't know well but recognized by voice and posture. Every few minutes, someone would step up, read the list, then scribble in their name like it meant something. Ella watched from the hallway. She didn't approach, didn't touch a pen. She didn't need to. By the end of the day, the bracket was nearly full. 12 names, all boys, all wearing at least a brown belt. A few girls stood nearby, talking in low voices. None of them added their names. Lena stood off to the side. She had her hands in her jacket pockets. She stared at the sheet like it might catch fire. Ella passed by with a bundle of towels. Lena asked quietly if she was going to sign up. Helen didn't stop walking, just said, "Not yet." That night, Ella trained until the streetlights came on. She moved slower than usual. Each strike held an extra second in the air. She let the silence between movements grow longer, not because she was tired, but because she was listening. Inside, the gym was dark. The front desk was closed. The mats were rolled. The lobby echoed with nothing but the buzz of the vending machine. Outside, the wind carried a soft hum from the highway. She balanced on one foot, eyes closed, one hand held forward as if cupping air. The stillness grounded her, reminded her of who she was before the medals, before the pressure, before everyone expected her to perform like a machine. The next morning, the bracket had a new name at the bottom. Written in careful print, small, unassuming. Ella. Someone had added it, not her. She didn't need to guess who. Lena walked by a few minutes later, eyes straight ahead. She didn't say a word. Ella didn't call her out. Just nodded once to herself and went back to work. The tournament was set for Saturday. It was Wednesday now. Damon announced it like a challenge. 1-minute rounds. Single elimination. Win and move forward. No exceptions. He said it loudly enough to echo off the mirrors. Ella was sweeping the back corridor when she heard him. The bristles of the broom stopped for just a second. Then she kept moving. Thursday passed in tension. People trained harder, spared longer. Noise filled the room. Bodies collided on the mats with more force than usual. Damon barked orders with his usual fire, but Ella noticed his voice cracking near the end. Maybe from overuse, maybe something else. Lena trained late. She drilled with Troy, who threw his punches too hard and smirked when she blocked them. Damon said nothing. Ella stayed out of sight. She wasn't hiding, she was studying. Friday brought more questions. People had started whispering about her. Some joked, some speculated. No one knew anything for sure. One rumor said she was Damon's niece. Another claimed she was only on the janitorial crew because she had lost a bet with Chuck Norris. That one made her laugh a little. By afternoon, Kevin had made it a game. He told everyone he was going to go easy on the cleaning girl, said he didn't want to mop the floor with someone who already lived on it. Damon didn't stop him. He just watched. Ella heard it all. She didn't flinch. Friday night, Chuck called. He asked how loud it had gotten. She said it was deafening. He asked how still she was inside it. She said calmly, "But ready." He paused, then asked the real question. "What are you walking into?" She didn't hesitate. Building that mistakes fear for strength. He waited. "And what are you carrying?" "Not fear." He smiled, then let it happen. Saturday morning she arrived before anyone else. She walked through the front door like it belonged to her, wore the same hoodie, same jeans, same expression. The mats were already set up. The chairs were in rows. The bracket had been redrawn in bold black marker. Her name was still there. Bottom right. Opposite Kevin. Perfect. Damon stood near the office window, arms crossed. He didn't greet her. He just glanced up once and then turned back to whatever he was pretending to review. One by one, students trickled in. Some wore competition Gs. Others sported their latest rank on their sleeve with pride. Most looked hyped. A few looked nervous. Ella stood near the back wall, alone. Kevin spotted her and laughed. Told someone next to him that it would be a short round, 30 seconds max. Lena arrived just after 10. She didn't look at Ella, not right away, but she gave a brief nod as she passed. Damon called everyone to the center. His tone was sharp. His posture was confident. He explained the rules again. Point system. Disqualifications. No excessive force. No contact above the neck unless controlled. Then he smiled. Thorne said, "Let's see what Steelcrest has been building." The first match was Troy versus a new brown belt named Miguel. It was quick. Troy won in 27 seconds. A spinning sweep followed by a clean counter to the chest. Miguel gasped for air but smiled afterward. The crowd clapped. The next few matches went fast. A few messes. One ended in a tie and had to go into a tiebreaker. The crowd was loud, energy high. Then came the final match of the first round. Damon cleared his throat. Ella, Kevin, Math 2. The room shifted. Kevin walked out first. He bounced on his toes, cracked his neck, bowed with a smirk. Ella stepped forward slowly. She didn't change her clothes. "I didn't wear a gi, but I'm still in that hoodie and jeans." Whispers spread like wildfire. "Is she serious? This is a joke, right?" Damon gave no expression, just motioned. Ella bowed formally. Kevin gave a sloppy version of it. They squared up. Kevin moved first. Quick jab, testing her distance. She didn't move. He grinned, threw a side kick, low and lazy. Ella stepped back, let it miss by inches. Still no attack. Kevin's grin faltered. He lunged forward with a sharper combination. She blocked. Lightly, no force, just angle. He pressed harder, this time with real intent. Ale pivoted, sidestepped, his momentum carried past her. And then, in one clean, quiet motion, she tapped his ankle with her foot, redirected his weight with her shoulder, and let gravity do the rest. Kevin hit the mat hard, flat on his back. The room went silent. Ella didn't gloat, didn't speak, just stepped back and bowed. Kevin sat up, stunned. Damon's face was unreadable. He announced that Ella has advanced. No applause, just tension. Ella returned to the back wall. Lena looked at her for the first time that day. Something in her eyes had changed. It wasn't confusing anymore. It was a belief. The second round went quickly. Ella faced Troy. He was cocky, strong, a bit more focused than Kevin had been, but not enough. She let him open, let him build speed, then folded him with a hip toss so smooth it looked rehearsed. Another silence followed. This time, a few claps. Small, but real. By the finals, it was her and Lena. No one had expected it. Damon called them forward. They bowed. Ella spoke softly, just loud enough for Lena to hear. "You earned this." Lena nodded. "So did you." The match was clean, respectful, balanced. Ella moved with control, Lena moved with intent. Neither pushed to dominate. They met in the middle, and at the end of 60 seconds, the point tally was even. Damon stood quietly for a long moment, then said tie, then both of you win. A few students applauded, a few more followed. Something shifted in that moment. Not loud, but deep. Later, while people packed up chairs and rolled mats, Damon walked over to Ella. His voice was low. "You're not just a janitor." Ella didn't answer. He asked, "Who are you?" She met his eyes. "The granddaughter of your teacher's teacher." He stared. She continued, "I came to see what you were building here. Now I know." He didn't argue, didn't defend. He just stood there, quiet. She walked past him. Lena followed. No one laughed. Not anymore. Sunday morning came quietly. The academy was closed. The mats were rolled up. The lights were off. A handwritten sign taped to the door read, "Tournament recovery, please rest." Ella stood outside at sunrise anyway. The sky was soft, brushed with pale orange and a touch of ash grey. She watched it from the curb, one hand in her hoodie pocket, the other wrapped around a coffee cup that had gone cold. She didn't mind. She hadn't come to train, not today. She came to remember. She closed her eyes and replayed the moment Kevin hit the mat, not because it was satisfying, but because of what followed. That long, hollow silence, the shift, the crack. It hadn't been about beating him. It had been about waking the room. And it had worked. She turned, looked at the academy's old red sign, then walked the perimeter of the building once, like a ritual. Her steps were slow, measured. Every corner told her something different. The front said, performance. The side said, pressure. But the back, where she trained alone, still said peace. Later that afternoon, her phone buzzed. It was Lena. The message was short, just a question. "You free?" Ella replied. They met at a park near the edge of town, where the trees were tall and the benches were never fully dry. Lena brought iced tea. Ella brought silence. They sat for a while before anyone spoke. Lena's voice was soft. "The first time I saw you, I thought you were afraid of being seen." Ella smiled. "I wasn't afraid. I was choosing." Lena nodded slowly. "That match, with Kevin, it shook people, even me." Ella looked out toward the trees. "I didn't do it to embarrass him." "I know. That's why it worked." Another pause. Lena leaned forward slightly. Damon hasn't said anything, not since yesterday. Ella raised an eyebrow. Silence can mean a lot. Lena sighed. I think it rattled him. You didn't fight like the others. You didn't yell, didn't charge, you just took space, controlled it. Renier shrugged. That's what karate is. Not just the strike, the stillness before it. Lena picked at her fingernail. He doesn't teach that. Not yet. Lena looked at her. But you could. Ella shook her head. I'm not here to take over. Then why are you here? Ella hesitated, then answered slowly. To remind someone of what they forgot. Lena didn't push further. She didn't need to. By Monday morning, the dojo felt different. Not loud, not proud, just off. The students lined up like they always did, but their glances were sharper. Their posture is less certain. A few whispered before class, but the usual jokes weren't there. Kevin wasn't there at all. Damon arrived 5 minutes late. He didn't smile, didn't clap, just walked in, set his bag down, and stood. The class waited. He started with drills, quick, snappy, but his tone was flatter than usual, like someone playing a part they no longer believed in. He didn't mention the tournament, didn't say who won, didn't acknowledge Ella. But Ella saw the way his eyes lingered on her during footwork drills. Not hostile, not impressed. Something closer to recognition. After class, he didn't call for a cool down, just walked into his office and shut the door. Lena stood near the water station watching the hallway. He's slipping, she said under her breath. Ella folded a towel neatly. He's adjusting. Lena turned to her. Is that what you call it? Ella nodded. The way people act when their control doesn't land the way it used to. The rest of the week passed like that. Quiet tension. Fewer corrections. Fewer lectures. Damon stopped yelling altogether by Thursday. His assistants ran warm-ups. He hovered at the edge, arms crossed, lips pressed thin. On Friday, Ella led a stretching session. It wasn't planned. One of the assistants had rolled his ankle. Damon was outside on a call. The class stood around awkwardly, not knowing what to do. Ella stepped forward, spoke clearly but gently. Let's move together, slowly. She walked them through each motion, breath by breath. Nobody questioned her. Nobody stopped her. Afterwards, a few students clapped softly. Damon saw it from the doorway. He didn't interrupt, didn't react. But he didn't look away either. That night, Ella wrote in her notebook, "Control doesn't vanish when you lose it. It just transfers to the next person willing to carry it with care." She underlined it once. Saturday morning, the dojo hosted an open mat session. Optional, unstructured. 10 students showed up. Ella wasn't scheduled to work, but she came anyway. She wore her gi for the first time, not the faded hoodie, not the jeans. A simple, clean GI, white, no patches. No belt, just her name, stitched small on the inside collar. People noticed. She stepped onto the mat without ceremony, began warming up in silence. A few students joined her, then more. By 10:30, she was leading them through partner drills. Nothing aggressive, just angles, balance, breath. Damon watched from the top of the stairwell. He didn't come down, but he stayed the whole hour. Later, he found her by the front desk. His voice was lower than usual, more measured. "I didn't know you were coming today." Ella didn't look up. "I was invited." "By who?" She smiled. "The mat? It doesn't belong to anyone." He didn't respond right away. When he did, his tone was different. "You move like someone who's lost before." Ella turned to him. "I have. That's why I move with purpose." He studied her, then asked quietly, "What did you lose?" "Time. Confidence." People who taught with their hands but forgot how to teach with their heart. He looked down. I used to have that, he said. She waited. He added, somewhere along the way, I started building walls instead of students. She nodded. You can take them down. One breath at a time. He didn't speak again. Just walked away slowly. On Sunday, he didn't come to the academy. Ella unlocked the door at 8. Ran class at 9. Taught pad work at 10. By noon, 12 students had come and gone. Each one thanked her. No one asked where Damon was. Later that day, she sat outside with Lena. They shared lunch on the same bench near the leaning pine. Lena handed her a folded envelope. Ella opened it. Inside was a note. Would you stay if things changed? No name, just that line. Ella folded it back. Lena asked what she was going to say. Nothing, she replied. For now, silence is the best answer. And that silence meant something. It wasn't a retreat. It was the sound of space being made. The sound of power shifting. Not loud, but steady. Like roots. By the second week, no one asked where Damon had gone. Classes kept running, students kept showing up. Ella kept showing up too. She didn't call herself an instructor. She didn't wear a belt. But when she stood at the front of the mat, people listened. Lena helped organize drills. Jason, one of the older students, volunteered to hold pads and correct footwork. For the first time there was laughter between sets. Not the kind that came from arrogance, but the kind that came from comfort. The walls of the dojo, once silent and stern, began to feel like they were breathing again.
On Thursday, Sarah returned. She had been gone for a few months, left after a harsh training session that Damon claimed would build grit. It had left her with bruised ribs and no reason to come back. But now she stood near the edge of the mat, watching Ella lead a slow warm-up. She didn't say anything at first, just observed. Ella noticed her, gave a small nod. Sarah returned it, then stepped onto the mat and joined the line. That evening, Ella sat on the back steps with her notebook. She didn't write much, just one sentence. Respect returns when you stop asking for it and start living it. She closed the book, let the quiet carry her a little longer. That weekend, Chuck came back. He didn't announce it, didn't text first. I just showed up at the doorway, hat in hand, with my eyes steady. Ella saw him from across the mat. Her face didn't change, but something in her shoulder softened. She walked to meet him at the entrance. He looked around. The place feels different, he said. It is. She led him inside. The students bowed as they passed, not because he was Chuck Norris. Most of them still didn't know. They bowed because Ella bowed first. Chuck sat near the far wall, watched silently for over an hour. After class, he helped put away equipment without being asked. Then, when most of the students had gone, Damon returned. He walked in through the side door, slower than usual, not because of injury, because of weight. He wasn't wearing his instructor uniform, just jeans and a faded shirt. His eyes met Ella's from across the room. He stopped walking. Chuck stood from his chair. Ella gave a small nod, and Chuck stepped aside. Damon walked toward her. He paused 3 feet away. The last time I stood here, I thought I had all the answers. Ella didn't reply. Damon continued. Then I watched someone move without force, speak without volume, and everything I believed about teaching cracked open. Ella crossed her arms loosely. What do you believe now? That fear lasts shorter than trust? That loud doesn't mean strong? And I forgot what it felt like to be a student. Ella waited. He looked down. I built this place to be unbreakable. But I started breaking people before they had a chance to grow. She said nothing, just let the silence hold him there. Damon finally looked up. Who are you? Ella took a breath, then spoke slowly. My name is Ella Norris. My grandfather taught me to strike with purpose and hold still when I wanted to run. He taught me not just how to win, but how to wait. And when I stopped competing, I didn't stop training. I stopped pretending that trophies were the point. Damon blinked. Chuck's your grandfather, Lena said quietly from the side of the mat. Damon turned, his eyes widened, then narrowed. You came here undercover? Ella shrugged. I came here to see. See what? She walked a slow half circle around him. To see what happens when someone teaches from fear instead of respect, to see what kind of power this place truly worships. He looked around the room. They respect you now. Ella stopped. Not because I beat them, because I didn't need to. Damon sat down on the mat. His back was straight, but his shoulders were low. What do I do now? Ella sat across from him. Start over, apologize, and be quiet long enough to hear who's still willing to trust you. He glanced toward Chuck, who nodded once. The next morning, Damon returned in uniform. He didn't lead warm-ups, didn't lecture. Instead, he bowed first to everyone, then slowly asked for their help. The room was still for a moment. Then Lena stepped forward, and Jason. Then the others. They began class as a team. Ella stood in the back, watching. Chuck leaned beside the door. She turned to him, who said, real teachers never leave, they just change seats. He smiled. Looks like your seat's at the front now. She tilted her head. I'm not staying for long. He nodded. But while you're here, make it matter. She looked out over the room, over students who have now moved with more breath, more ease, more trust. I think it already does. That night, she opened her notebook again. She didn't write anything. She just flipped to the beginning, read through old entries, through notes about fear, power, silence, and pain. And then she turned to the blank page at the end. Let it stay empty, not because there was nothing left to say, but sometimes the next chapter doesn't need to be written by you. It needs to be lived by those who stayed. The new sign went up on us. The paint was still drying when Ella arrived. The ladder leaned against the building, and the old letters, steel crest, lay in a quiet pile beside the sidewalk. A new wooden plaque hung above the front door now. Simple, natural grain, no shine. Oh, Norris Way. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't even big, just honest. Underneath, in smaller font, someone had added the words she once wrote in her notebook. Strength without control is just force. Control without the heart is just a habit. Ella stood on the curb for a while, looking up at the sign. She didn't smile, not exactly, but something in her shoulders let go, like a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Inside, the dojo smelled like lemon oil and canvas. Fresh. Familiar. Students were already arriving. Younger ones are holding gear bags that are too big for their frames. Older ones laugh and relax without the tightness they used to carry in their jaws. Jason was helping set up a new whiteboard in the corner. Lena was writing names down for attendance, her clipboard held with quiet authority. Damon stood near the center of the mat, tying his belt. His posture had changed. Still tall, still firm, but less like stone, more like a tree, rooted but flexible. Ella walked in, nodded to him, then set her bag on the bench by the far wall. The seminar was starting in an hour. Instructors from 3 schools were on their way. It wasn't a competition, no medals, no ranks, just training, sharing, learning. He checked the gear bags, refilled the water jugs, and walked the edges of the room one more time. Like always, Chuck hadn't